If you've played any Pokemon TCG in the past year, you've for sure come across, played against, and likely lost against our current reigning champion, Gardevoir EX. So when last week's wheel resulted in Ralts, meaning it was now time for me to make a Gardevoir EX deck, I decided to fully embrace the bizarre and make a home-cooked deck featuring a range of psychic Pokemon that players alike wouldn't see coming. A Gardevoir deck that is actually fun to play. Just because I made a deck that I would enjoy playing though, would it actually be good? Would it be a meta champion? Or without its staples like Screamtails or Drifloon, would it be a Veluza loser? This is the 825 Deck Challenge. All of the Pokemon in this deck had a specific purpose, with Ralts, the reason we're here today, evolving into Kirlia, and then Gardevoir EX. Gardevoir EX's ability, Psychic Embrace, allows for psychic energy from the discard pile to be attached to any of my psychic Pokemon in play, with 20 damage done to that respective Pokemon when the energy is attached. Additionally, its attack, Miracle Force, does 190 damage and allows Gardevoir to recover from any special conditions, like Poison or Confusion. While Gardevoir's attack is alright, it's really in the deck to enable all of the other psychic Pokemon we got in here. Before I get into what makes the deck truly unique, I ran 3 other Pokemon that are very common to the Gardevoir deck. Munkidori is a must. With a dark energy attached, Munkidori can use its Adrenabrain ability to move 30 damage counters from one of my Pokemon to one of my opponents, an easy way to clear damage off of my Pokemon after using Gardevoir's ability. I also had Fezandipiti EX for 3-card draw ability when my Pokemon gets knocked out. And lastly, Lillie's Clefairy EX, mainly for its ability which makes Dragon-type Pokemon weak to Psychic, allowing for a Dragapult one-shot machine. And now it's time to meet the ragtag team of single prizers I referred to as Ralts Radicals, with the first lot going to Uxie. For a single Psychic Energy attach, Uxie does 20 damage to all of my opponent's Pokemon, and with Munkidori's in play on my side, sometimes that 20 damage can really come back to bite. Next up is Mewtwo, with 2 attacks, Reflective Barrier which does 20 damage, and then on the opponent's next turn, any damage done to Mewtwo then results in that same amount of damage being done to the attacking Pokemon. Mewtwo also has the attack Psylash, which for 3 energy does 130 damage and discards 2 energy. This wouldn't be a problem though, because with Gardevoir, the energy would come right back. Next in the crew, the new Elgyem. For 1 Psychic Energy attached, his attack, Slight Shift, lets me move one of my opponent's energy on the board to any other of my opponent's Pokemon. Seems minor, but in certain matchups, this can be game winning or losing, and it was a key tool to my deck. And the final member of Ralts Radicals, Fezandipiti, but not the one you're thinking of, the one from Twilight Masquerade. For a single Psychic Energy attach, its attack does 30 times damage for every energy attached to it. So combined with this deck, I'd be able to pour energy onto it using Gardevoir's ability, shift around some of the damage using Munkidori, and then attack for upwards of 240 damage. The high damage from a single prizer isn't all though. Its ability, Pheromone, allows you to flip a coin if Darkness Energy is attached whenever damage is done to Fezandipiti by a Pokemon's attack. If it flips heads, the damage to Fezandipiti is nullified. This deck isn't about big numbers or heavy damage, it's about creating a puzzle or difficult situation for my opponent to try and get out of, all while dealing with damage counters flying all over the place. For supporters, I don't want to spend too much time on this crew today, as it's every supporter that you would expect in the standard Gardevoir deck. So this was the Ralts deck. No Screamtails, no Drifloon, just straight up fun. Or so I hoped. It was now time to see how it would actually play. In my first matchup, my opponent started with a Miraactus inactive, and I started with a lone Munkidori. Going first, I had plenty of tools at my disposal, as I utilized Buddy-Buddy Poffin to get 2 Ralts on my bench so I could begin to evolve up and work towards Gardevoir. I also used Artazon to get one of my starting Pokemon on the bench. Seeing the Miraactus, I knew the play was going to likely be to trap one of my Pokemon inactive, using its corner attack that does 20 damage and prevents my Pokemon from retreating. So I Air Ballooned Munkidori to my bench and got Elgyem out in the aim to disrupt. Miraactus was just a single piece of what was a larger Cynthia's Garchomp deck, so instead of going for the corner, I think unthreatened by what I had going on, they decided to TM Evo and throw it back to me. And this is where the fun began. I Iono'd for 6 fresh cards, which combined with the Artazon let me get out a Mewtwo as an attacker in the event Elgyem gets taken out. as well as evolve up one of my Ralts to Kirlia, and then ending the turn with Elgyem's Sight Shift, where I moved the fighting energy off of Miraactus and onto Roserade. And well, for the next few turns, I was just able to take my time, moving energy off of my opponent's Pokemon to Pokemon like the Roserade or Munkidori, who wouldn't benefit from it. One mistake that I did make here was putting one of my dark energies onto Mewtwo to get him powered up instead of placing it onto Munkidori so I could start moving damage over to my opponent. So after a few turns, the 20 damage done by corner was enough to take out the 60 HP Elgyem. But I saw how impactful moving the energy was, and it seemed like my opponent had no real way to get Miraactus out of active on its own. So I decided to Night Stretcher back the Elgyem and run it back, but this time with a Bravery Charm. I had successfully misplaced 5 energies, and now, no longer cornered by the Miraactus due to lack of energy, I subbed in Mewtwo to begin dealing some minimal damage, though their Munkidori kept throwing the damage right back at me. And with them getting Luminous energy down onto their Garchomp and their Munkidori being able to Adrena Brain with the dark energy, I decided instead of dealing damage, I would just go back to Elgyem to move more energy around. First moving the Garchomp's Luminous energy over to Roserade with another Luminous energy there, essentially nullifying the 2 energies, and then moving the dark energy from Munkidori over to Garchomp where it would be useless. And with a total of 8 misplaced energies on my opponent's side, I was ready to shift into full attack mode, but my opponent opted to just concede instead. So the first match was really just won through Elgyem, and Gardevoir was just there as a backup. I had a feeling each match was maybe going to play differently, and that feeling was correct, because in my next matchup against the Dragapult Dusknoir, Elgyem would actually see no play. Instead, it would be the Fezandipiti show. I'd use turn 1 to attach a dark energy to the active Fezandipiti to activate its coin flip potentially damage nullifying ability. And with my opponent having Badoo in play, I used the items I could because next turn, sure enough, in came the Itchy Pollen. Itchy, itchy. Professor's research can't be stopped by the Itchy Pollen, and neither can the Artazon, so I continued building up my board with both a Munkidori and an additional Ralts now benched. Not getting a Kirlia here was a little bit scary, as now I was behind on the Evo race. After my opponent did another Itchy Pollen, I Professor's researched again, but this time did get the Kirlia and a Psychic Energy that I had been looking for, and so I was able to get a KO on the active Badoo. Now back to my opponent, with 2 Recon Directives on board, the fully anticipated Dragapult EX with the Luminous and Neo Energy attached came to active. I wasn't sure if they tried a boss or counter catcher around the Fezandipiti, but instead they decided to take the gamble and Phantom Dive. If Fezandipiti's ability would flip heads, the damage wouldn't hit Fezandipiti though, and 200 wasted damage does not feel good. 60 damage would still get to be placed by Dragapult though, and they'd place all 60 onto my benched Ralts for an easier knockout. Due to an Iono from my opponent, my Gardevoir EX had been shuffled away by my opponent, and I was left in a tricky spot. I could Artazon and then flip the script, hoping for either a Night Stretcher, Ultra Ball, or Gardevoir EX itself, or forgo the flip the script and use the Nest Ball in hand to get a second attacker like Lillie's Clefairy in the mix. And out of fear of a total steamroll coming my way soon, and the possibility of the Phantom Dive and the Dusclops on the other side taking out my Kirlia, I took a huge gamble and got my Lillie's Clefairy benched so that my Fez would hit for double damage here, and I'd have a potential attacker if Fezandipiti's ability failed this next turn. But would you look at that? After attacking, my Fezandipiti was attacked again via Phantom Dive, and yet again my Fezandipiti flipped another heads, nullifying another 200 damage from Dragapult. My opponent opted for the KO on the Ralts instead of the combined bombardment on the Kirlia, and I think that's because they were hoping for a 1-to-1 trade with Munkidori if they got a Dusknoir. But honestly, they waited too long, because with Gardevoir online, the floodgates were now about to release. Between the damage done last turn and the Adrena Brain from Munkidori, the active Dragapult was already hurt, so applying just one more Psychic Energy to Fezandipiti would do enough to put this Dragapult down. And I was feeling really good, because although there was a Cloak and Dragapult EX on the bench, neither one of them had energy. And with the Neo Upper Energy already used, it would take at least 2 turns for Phantom Dive to come online. And well, they didn't have 2 turns to wait, because Adrena Brain combined with Lillie's Clefairy that I swapped into active would take another KO. Before I could even hit though, the concede came through. Obviously, things could have gone real south that match had Fezandipiti's ability not flipped heads, but things didn't go south because Fezandipiti's ability was in play and did hit heads. The final test match also led to some really different strategies, as it was against a deck with Joltik, Crustle, and Iron Thorns. And unfortunately, the Pokemon they had starting in active is Iron Bundle, whose ability usually allows it to be discarded, but only if it's on the bench, meaning it was a little bit stuck here in the active spot. Not initially knowing what my opponent was playing or what the best strategy would be, I used just one of my 2 Nest Balls to get a Munkidori on the bench and then attached an energy and passed. This turned out to be a great strategy as I saw my opponent's Pokemon come down. I then was able to use my turn to get the Ralts out of active and use the Uxie that I put down via the second Nest Ball to begin piling on 20 damage at a time on each of my opponent's Pokemon. This meant that even if my opponent wants the Jolting Charge on their next turn, I'd be getting the KO on Joltik. To avoid that, they ended up evolving the Joltik into a surprising Galvantula EX, and then this meant they'd have to slowly build up their Crustle. As a result, I decided to really slow down my play, even swapping out the Uxie for a Cleffa for free card draw, which set me up for a couple of good turns. But I think seeing the poor matchup and already how unthreatened my deck was by its wall, my opponent went inactive and then conceded. I was very surprised at how well this deck was performing. Again, some luck involved, but 3 matches that utilized different Pokemon, and I think I enjoyed how reactive the deck allowed me to be based on what my opponent was playing. Was this match winning streak going to continue into the final showdown? My palms were sweaty, and it was time to find out. This was one of the greatest Pokemon TCG matches that's ever been played, and I'm not interested in any discussion. It was fast, thrilling, and decisive. My starting hand gave me Uxie and a Munkidori, along with some energy and a Nest Ball. My opponent had some form of an Ends deck, but also with Hydraon in the mix, and Hydraon last week was very, very rude to me. Further, the large majority of my deck is weak to Dark type, so this deck was going to be a problem for me. With me going second and drawing into another energy, I decided not to Nest Ball quite yet, as I wanted to see exactly where my opponent was going and just used Uxie to hit for 20. My opponent immediately Rare Candy Dano into the Black Bolt White Flare Hydraon. This thing looks like a menace. They also bossed up my Munkidori and put down another Dano. No energy was attached and no Zoroarks came into play. Taking the opportunity to discard a Psychic Energy, I retreated Munkidori, decided to get the Cleffa on my bench, and Uxie went back up and hit everything for another 20. My opponent had only 1 card, and so I saw hope here. If their draws were truly as dead as it seemed, in 2 more turns I'd have a knockout on both of the Zoroarks. I held my breath. They drew, but couldn't do anything and passed. I drew an Iono, but there was no world where I was giving my opponent fresh cards, so I just stayed on the offensive and attacked again. And with another card draw, I'm so curious what it was, because the hand of 3 cards must have been rough enough that my opponent decided to concede. Ouch. Sometimes the hand draw can do that, especially if you build a deck that doesn't have a solid flow factor. And so controversially, Ralts, who didn't show up at all in the final matchup, is a meta champion, because Uxie just kept on hitting and hitting and hitting. For the record, I did end up playing another match in ranked with this deck, this time against the Joltik Box deck, and my deck was victorious there as well. I gave up a prize card early to my opponent, and then counter-captured an Iron Hands with Elgyem in play. Then I proceeded to shift around energy off of Iron Hands over and over continuously to prevent the retreat or attack, with the full intent to just mill out my opponent's deck. My opponent didn't want to wait around and get milled out, so they also just conceded. Again, this deck's options seem endless, and it's all because of the enabler of Ralts into Gardevoir EX. There's something so freeing about playing a deck where there's so much flexibility to zig or zag, and combined with the variety of Pokemon that I was able to use in a way that was effective, I'd give this deck's fun rating a 10 out of 10. For flow factor, I'd give the deck a 9 out of 10. Not once did I feel out of options or unable to get some cards that I wanted or needed. And as far as win equity goes, this is a tough rating, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, but please feel free to disagree. I did incredibly well with it on live, but I also got incredibly lucky with my Fezandipiti flips and some of my matchups. I think this is probably a deck that at best goes 50-50 in a paper format, but on live there's room for a deck like this, giving this deck an average score of 9.3, possibly the highest rated deck so far. Getting to look at Gardevoir EX in ways that probably a lot of people haven't for a while really allowed for some creative and cool combinations, and something that I would encourage you to do is to look at some Psychic Pokemon and see what you can make happen with Gardevoir EX. And now, onto the wheel. I hope you're feeling really excited about this. Shelder. Very interesting. This is what Shelder does, and this is what its evolution, Cloyster, does. The real question is, am I going to be able to do anything with these cards? Guess we'll have to find out next time on the 825 Deck Challenge.